Afternoon. Welcome to the Athens City Planning Commission. It is Thursday, the 4th of May. It's hard to believe it's May already, but it is. And it is about 12:01 p.m. Looking up and down the dais, I see that we do have a quorum. We have one commissioner who will be joining us soon. The first item of business is to administer any oaths for anyone who's going to be speaking today or wishes to speak. If you would, just please raise your hand. Do you swear that everything you're going to present before the Athens Planning Commission is truthful and honest? Okay, thank you. Disposition of the March 2nd, 2023 minutes. Everybody, all the commissioners, you should have that in your package.
I will move that we accept the March 2nd minutes as presented.
I second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor of adopting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, March 2nd minutes have been adopted. Cases, we do have a case today. This is case 23-01, modified site plan. This is Title 41 for 960 East State Street, commercial development, Chipotle and Starbucks. Commissioners, again, you should have this in your package to see the modified plans. I think now might be a good time for the representatives on this particular project to speak to the modifications. If you would, just kind of walk us through. I know that, I don't know, David Riggs, Director Riggs, if you maybe want to start and just summarize the issues that came up at the former Planning Commission meeting where this was adopted and which led then to these revisions.
Sure. Yes, I can. Thank you, Mayor and members of Planning Commission. We had a site or a case on March the 2nd where this board approved the site plan for the project you have today with contingencies that they address the comments that staff had regarding, there were several issues there. We still have one or two outstanding concerns, and we thought it would be more appropriate to bring it back to this board to see how they'd like to resolve those concerns.
Yes, you may.
Sir, if I may, members of the commission, in your packet, there is a letter from me from 12 April that outlined ultimately staff's concerns after some back and forth and tried to distill it down to 3 key issues, and that ultimately is what we're here to talk about, is the developer's ability or inability to follow those particular staff requirements.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Sure. Is there a way to put this on the screen, this site plan?
Scott, you don't have the images, do you?
The goal here being, I wanted to make sure that we all have a clear understanding of the problem as I understand it. And if we all have that, then this is superfluous anyhow, we can continue on. But I just want to make sure we all understand the issue that's trying to be addressed.
Yeah, that's what we have. We have your
Okay.
revised.
So the issue, as I understand it, I'll just run through it briefly, maybe we can follow along. So in this center entrance point, the issue, as I understand it, is you've got people trying to leave, turning right or left. And then you've got the guy coming out of Chipotle that's not going to wait his turn, and he's going to pull out into the intersection where this red hashing is and prohibit people from coming in and turning into Starbucks, thus creating stacking on State Street, either way, right in or left in. And so if that is the issue, we've done two things that certainly address that issue and, you know, come darn close to eliminating it. First, we've hashed this area with a do not block intersection signage. We've hung do not block intersection signs on each side of that intersection. And more importantly, if we look at the bulk of the cars in Starbucks, 70 to 80% of those cars are now being forced out of the secondary entrance point, the westernmost entrance point. Reason is the parks on the right side of the Starbucks site are angled, so those people have to go around the drive-through. And then secondly, anybody coming through the drive-through has to leave through that secondary entrance point. So, fair question is everyone going to abide by the do not block intersection sign? I think we can probably all agree the answer to that question is no. But at some point, we've got to have faith in our citizens to do what's right and not do that. But to belt and suspenders that problem, we force 70 to 80% of the Starbucks traffic out of the other entrance. Additionally, there are almost no times when you look at peak loads from Starbucks and Chipotle that those two overlap. Starbucks peak hours are probably from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9:30. Chipotle doesn't open until 11 o'clock. You know, people aren't knocking down the doors at Starbucks at lunchtime. Certainly they see business. And then with Chipotle being primarily lunch and dinner, I think it's a pretty clear argument that those two loads are offsetting. Secondly, I think we would all agree that the vast majority of people leaving this site are going to be turning right out of either entrance they elect to leave from. And so the stacking component at the main entrance point really becomes lesser of an issue because those folks most of them are not waiting to take a left turn. So happy to, you know, field some questions on that or talk about the other issue if we'd like. Can I answer any questions on the access issue?
What did you, I didn't hear, I caught the peak time for for Starbucks. What'd you say the peak time was for Chipotle?
Well, Chipotle doesn't open till 11.
Till 11?
So I'd say its peak times are 11 to 1.
Can I?
Sure.
I'm Jeff Myers.
Hey,
I'm a
Jeff.
real estate broker from Columbus. Been doing it for about 35 years. I've done 65 of these through Central Ohio all the way down to West Virginia. Did several hundred drive-throughs. And I realized no one wants a safety concern. We don't want a safety concern. But I can tell you a lot about Chipotle. We don't have any affiliation with Starbucks. Obviously, we're two separate companies. But we like to be side by side. You see that when you come to Columbus and other locations. It's because our customers come at different times. We don't want a Raising Cane's next to us. We don't want a McDonald's. We open at 11 o'clock. Our peak time period is that 11:30 to 1:30 because people got to go back to work. Well, that's not their peak time. Then, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I've been around the coffee people. You drink your first cup of coffee in the morning. Drink your second cup of coffee, some guys, drink the second cup around 3 or 4 o'clock. You get that perk, right? The third one, if you have one, is after dinner. The dinner business is spread out because you don't have to go back to work. So that's the reason we like to partner with someone who doesn't create issues on the site. So it's a matter of customers that come in on the site. We're also cognizant of keeping things safe, keeping things open. And by the way, even at that, we are not a drive-through. We are a pickup window. Big difference that the younger generation, which I'm not a part of anymore, you order on your phone. And when you order on your phone, there are 10-minute brackets that only allow them to order so much. You go down the street, I was down here, I did this original Chipotle many years ago. We did the original Taco Bell. You go in there, there's nobody in line. There's 25 orders on the right-hand side, they're pickup. The children, okay, they're kids to me. The kids order this stuff, they want in, they want out. Same way it goes with the way they do business when we're doing with these pickup windows. It's the way it works. So you spread yourself out and you don't put yourself in jeopardy for parking, for access, and for coming on and off that lot. It's the wave of the new Even McDonald's is trying to do it. You've been pressured, we see it on TV. They still have a drive-through. We don't. We don't have a menu board, not gonna have a menu board. And we try to regulate how the people come and go off the site, which is also complementary to what's going on here with this site. I've seen a lot of these, and believe me, they work. Or we wouldn't, again, do not want problems.
Absolutely.
A brief question, sir, for you. The last thing you said was you don't have a menu board.
And if you would go to the podium,
Yeah, that'd be
that way
great.
the mic is picking up.
He's so big, I can't get beside him.
Yeah, you don't have a menu board. So what you're saying is there's not a place to go and have a speaker and
No.
speak to at this particular
No.
location?
No, no speaker, no wires, no. This is a matter of, you've got to regulate yourself. And I don't know, again, I don't know who does it. I have problems myself. When you order something, when you go pick it up from one of those restaurants, say I'm gonna pick it up, they tell you you gotta be there at 6:05, because if you're there early, you're not gonna get it. That's the system that they're using too.
So would you say a point of reference for this community might be Donato's, which is down the street, which is a similar drive-through situation where there's no menu board and speaker outside?
I don't know what they do, but if it don't have one, I guess that would be the end. I don't know how Donato's operates.
Thank you.
I've lost a little bit, but yes, there is, every one of these, and we have, I don't know how many we have now in Columbus, but we have hundreds and hundreds of them now. We're only allowed to do them. Matter of fact, in today's world, I probably wouldn't, it'd be a 50-50 chance if I could even put this thing in the old movie theater. The kids don't like it. I mean, I hate to say it, we say about wanting to walk to things, and that's all cool, but we as a generation still like to get it and go. But we have no menu board, we have no, and you better have your order. They will not take it there. There's nothing to order there.
Okay.
Mark, did you have anything pertinent to add on the traffic? So in sum, on the traffic issue, I would say the solution proposed by the city is, in our estimate, about $120,000 to $130,000 solution that we can't tolerate from a budgetary perspective, but what we've done is put forth a solution that we feel provides the equal outcome at a price we can afford and get this project going.
I keep talking, I like to talk. The last item is, I've done so many of these. We have been working on this site for over 2.5 years. We have done, I don't know how many site plans to try to make this work. We have to work with Starbucks on one side, your city on the other, and us. It's not easy to tell your relatives where to have Thanksgiving. And here we are, we're trying to make this happen. And we've tried and we've tried. And on top of this, what we find out is, you got something out there that I've only heard about. It's called plastic soils. Is that what you call those things out there? Is that the name? When you cut into that hillside, it starts moving even more. So in order that thing doesn't move out on our building, we have to put a $350,000 wall down the bedrock. Now, not too many companies can absorb that, but we've upped our price like 3 times to take that. So I know that's not a concern on the traffic, but all the money, all the time, all the effort, we're at the end. We got no more time, we got no more money. So I'm asking you, we'd love to come to your community. We want to be a part of your community. I think we're good at what we do. Ask people about us. And Starbucks, I think they do a pretty good job too. That's why I want to be beside them. I hope you can help us.
Thank you. Other questions from the commissioners?
Well, I still remain concerned, not so much about the circulation on the property. That's something that Starbucks and Chipotle have to deal with. But I'm concerned about traffic coming in and coming out, and what happens on East State Street. One of my concerns is with the trench drain that you folks are proposing to put in there to capture water. The driveway above that is all, or the road above that is all gravel. That thing is going to fill up, and it's going to not operate properly. I just think we need to look at a better solution than just a trench drain across there. My experiences, having worked at the university, are those trench drains fill up, and it's a problem.
Sure. So a couple things there. First is, that road is on our property and the title to the property states that, maintenance is to be shared with all people that use the road. I'm pretty certain I'm gonna have a hard time going and getting our neighbors to stroke a $10,000 check, to repave a road. Secondly, the trench drain, if it's a maintenance issue, we're pretty familiar with maintenance agreements and maintenance obligations on things like that cities have imposed previously. And then thirdly, and I think most importantly, you know, if we've got, hard to price it without getting the engineers to actually draw it up and price it for us, but, you know, you call that $20,000 to $40,000 of work regrading that road. If we leave, the deal doesn't happen, where's the water going? It's going to State Street. So we're proposing a solution that we think helps mitigate. Does it solve every concern? Probably not. Will the trench drain back up with silt? Probably. But we can clean that up and help better the problem as opposed to packing up and going to the next town and doing nothing for what's there today. So I would ask you to at least consider some benefit versus no benefit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you consider recording on the deed requirement that the property owner will maintain that drainage feature that you put on? Because, you know, you could very well develop this property, then sell it immediately, and a subsequent owner say, I didn't agree to that.
Sure, what I would typically do is enter into an agreement with the city and record that against the property. And that agreement would say, of course, that all 4 or 5 beneficiaries of that trench drain are gonna share in its maintenance cost. You know, why would we bear the burden entirely of a shared road that we use, you know, 10, 20% of?
Do you think you'd be able to get them to agree to that?
I would certainly take a swing at it. That's what the title to their property says when they bought it, so I hope they would. And that cost is certainly far more nominal than, you know, call it $40,000 to regrade that road.
You know, you talk about the idea that circulation, you know, that the nice thing about the arrangement is that you've got businesses that have peaks at different times. What about just eliminating that driveway onto that western curb cut and just use the center driveway for both businesses?
So there was if we look back at the history of this case, there were concerns initially raised about the load on that one curb cut. So we put that in as a proposed solution or a mitigation factor, if you will, to that concern. So if you guys want to get rid of it and permit it that way, we're happy to do that. That saves us time and money. But we thought we put it in at the city's request effectively, is why we did that. But we can live without it if you can live without it, I guess, to answer your question.
I could support that. I would also like to see that center driveway moved on the other side of the utility pole, and there be 3 lanes of traffic, 2 out, 1 left, 1 right, and 1 in.
I could say unequivocally that we cannot accommodate that request. We don't have the money to accommodate it. There's storm drains on the road, utilities in the way. That's a deal killer for us. We can't do it.
I'll speak up. I've been super impressed with what you guys have done. Obviously, this is a site that not many people could afford to make work, and you guys have. And you've obviously done your due diligence and are willing to invest, like you said, on the retention wall and all that stuff. So I, for one, am very impressed and think you guys have kind of done everything that we've asked up to the ability that you're able to do.
Yeah, I don't think you need to push the button, but Scott's shaking his head back there because I know how the buttons work. They're flaky.
Thank you. Would you be willing to, you know, there's obviously a question about, you know, your opinion of how this particular solution is going to address the concern about traffic versus my staff's opinion about how this particular solution is going to affect traffic. You know, assuming that we permit you to build it this way, the way that you proposed, and then you go away, and there is indeed a problem, someone's got to fix it, and it won't be the property owner necessarily. Would you be willing to post a bond for a period of time that would have the city as the beneficiary to fix the problem should we develop a significant traffic problem based upon your proposed solution?
Post a bond to then come in and put a third.
Right.
First I've heard of it, I'd certainly have to think of it. You know, whether that money is spent today or 6 months from now, that's puts me upside down.
And a bond typically wouldn't cost that much relative to.
Is it a 1%, sort of like a payment and performance bond?
You know, we were thinking a bond with a payment amount of around $60,000 as we discussed this, because we think that would be about the cost associated with widening that drive. That said, I don't know what your cost would be for a bond for a 2-year period for such an instrument. A lot of times, the way bonding ends up working for folks is a function of the size of the company and
Sure.
what they have the ability to purchase.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this question. Can you articulate what your plan achieves that our plan falls short of?
So I think the biggest concern, and David, I don't know if you want to speak up here, but is that, you know, we're going to have queuing onto East State Street and create a situation where, you know, both left turners and right turners entering the property cannot enter the property, you know, immediately due to congestion happening on the property.
Sure.
You know, 2 ways out basically gives more queuing, or two lanes out gives more queuing and more space to, you know, stack a couple more cars, particularly a left turner who maybe be waiting for a period of time in a space, and then you know, decrease the likelihood of there being queuing on the property. And did I say that correctly?
My understanding was you were asking for 2 lanes in.
No, what we really wanted was 2 lanes out, a left turn and a right turn out, and 1 turn in. I know that that Sali Eldabaja, our city engineer, said either way would work, but I think our preference was to have 2 outs and 1 in from the property.
And you are correct. When I look at the letter from 12 April, we did note that it was 2 inbound lanes, but I think that you know, subsequently we looked at it and 2 out is probably what our staff prefers as the solution. But you know, clearly you can't afford that. So.
And again, I
question
think
is,
if you
would
look at the
be willing to
merits,
post a bond?
excuse me, sorry. If you look at the merits of that, and according to Saleh, I believe that he's showing that we can stack 2 cars below the red hashing. So you've gone from 2 to 4. Is that fair?
It is,
Yeah,
other
2
than a
cars.
left turner oftentimes has a lot longer time spent waiting to move than a right turner.
Sure. And knowing
And
that.
at this point, a left turner would be, you know, sitting in that lane,
Right.
the only singular lane, and be able to turn and wait for the period of time until they could get gas.
Right. Now, that left turner would have to be, first, it would have to be one of the, let's call it 30% of Starbucks customers that park and go inside. And 2, that left turner would have had to park on these front 10 spaces, not on the angled parks. So is it gonna happen? Yeah, it's probably gonna happen from time to time. But at the end of the day, the city has to make a cost-benefit analysis of that happening every so often compared to the benefit of the investment that we're talking about. Can I say a car's never gonna stack on State Street? No, I can't say that. But are we killing $8 to $10 to $12 million of investment over a car stacking on State Street every so often? That's the question I think the city has to answer.
I know during the grand opening, I hope we may have to have a traffic cop or something. We're not gonna open at the same time. We never do. Starbucks and us will not open on the same day. I think that's when you'll have the thing. That happens everywhere we go. And then it dies down to normal business. I mean, it just is. That's just what happens. It's nature. When I built this Chipotle, I was here the day it opened. I don't know how many people were around. The kids were stacked up around the block, all the way around it, and all the way around the block. It happened once. I like to tell you it happened today, but it was me and 3 other people in there. I mean, you know, so that can happen at that particular moment. And I think we can mitigate that by having maybe hiring someone to help police-wise or something for that first week. I just don't see it being a long-term. And frankly, to be honest with you, I know the sales volumes. I know how much sales we do in these different areas. And I mean, in Athens, we want to be here. We want you. But it's not going to be, I hate to say it, with the density of people that would be the same in some higher density areas. So it probably is not going to have as much traffic because of that as well. I mean, you're a smaller town. I'm from a small town. You know, so anyhow, all of that weighs into how we evaluated it at Chipotle and how we laid it out, how we did it, what we thought of the parking situation and everything else. What we estimated our sales volumes would be too. And which is how we base it on making a profit. I mean, it is a dirty word. We have to make a profit after all these expenses. I hope I didn't muddy up.
No. So a question I do have, I guess now that just thinking about the Uptown, and I was deeply involved as a city council member back in those days when it transitioned from the theater to Taco Bell, and actually Taco Bell even predated my being here in Athens, but certainly when it went from Taco Bell to Chipotle, it has a liquor permit. Is that something that you're considering for this site too, to where?
They apply usually for a liquor permit. It is not mandatory to get it.
Right.
And their sales volume on that is so small. It's more of a convenience item for someone next to a movie theater or an entertainment district. I don't think that I've been in a Chipotle in a long time and saw anybody grab a beer. This one doesn't have it.
It's certainly the case for the one uptown where I don't even think they serve anymore because.
Yeah, no, we don't really want to promote that.
Okay.
We did it for that family guy that said, hey, could I have a beer when I went to the movie next door? You go to Columbus, there's one in Worthington and Crosswoods and there's some others, but it's not a big thing. And if we didn't have it, if somebody's going to make that a thing, it's not a big deal.
Well, one of the things that, as I'm looking at this, that I think was helpful for me was better understanding your volume times at these two locations to where it's not going to be high volume all day long for both businesses moving forward. You know, trust me, I get it with Starbucks. And with Chipotle opening at 11:30, that certainly will help kind of stretch things out.
It's 11 a.m., but
Sure, whatever. Yep, thank you. I don't mean whatever to what you just said. It's like, yes, as long as that we know that volume times are not concurrent. Yeah. Any further discussion from the commissioners?
I will, I want to say that I appreciate everything you folks have done. I still remain concerned about slippage on the site. I know you're investing a lot of money in a retaining wall. I'm less uncomfortable with that, knowing that the city will have an engineer there on site, basically full-time while it's going in to try to protect the adjacent properties. I'm still uncomfortable with not having 3 lanes, two out, 1 in. I'd rather see you take the tie-in to that western entrance, take the money there and put it on the other side and put in a 3rd lane. And so I'm probably going to vote no for this.
I'll vote yes.
All right, well,
Or, oh yeah, sorry, should we?
You know, we're not ready to vote yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
sure.
Before you take a vote?
Absolutely.
My name is Barbara Stout, and I live at 954 East State Street, and that is the property directly behind this proposed development. And I think, I've got concerns about slippage and drainage, but I'm not an engineer, so if you guys think you've addressed it, I'm willing to go with that. And as far as property, I've always been willing to do some maintenance on that driveway, but good luck trying to get the owner of the apartment building who won't even return calls. And I won't be the only one to do it. but every maintenance that's been done on that driveway up until now, I have done by hand. I have dug those drains, I have filled in those holes. But you guys are missing the elephant in the room about the traffic problem. I mean, the big problem is, if I'm reading this site plan right, you're in and you're out for Starbucks is in that entrance to the property, correct?
You could use it for in and out, yes.
Okay, well, here's the way it is right now. It's not super wide. It's really pretty hard for two cars to pass each other. They can if you're going very slowly, and you have to go really slow in right now because of the bad condition of the driveway. And there's a huge pothole that's way down below anything that is mine. But here's the thing, and I've been paying really close attention to traffic patterns for the last 3 months on State Street. So I'm coming home, and I'm coming from in town. So I get into the lane, and I need to make a left-hand turn into my driveway, right? Well, at certain times of the day, there's a fair amount of traffic coming in from the east. So, okay, I might have to wait. I've counted. The most I've ever had to wait is 10 cars. It's usually in the evening that this is happening. That's coming in from out east, coming in towards town. Okay? But you've also got an exit, a two-way exit directly across the street, which is that mall that has the Mexican restaurant and the Chinese restaurant and Planet Fitness. And so sometimes I'm there in the lane to turn into the drive to go to my house. I wait for 8, 9, 10 cars to go by, and at that moment there are 3 cars stacked up and they make a left-hand turn, so I have to wait a little bit more. Okay, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, and that's with no Starbucks traffic adding into this, okay? Also, in front of that apartment house, you've got perpendicular parking. And this happened to me just the other day. I turn in, and just at that moment, someone who's parked in front, so I'm turning in this way, and someone who's parked here is trying to get out. In order to get out, they have to back all the way up. And right now, they're backing all the way up into their property to do it. It's going to be a tight thing, but they can do it. But I had to stop. And where did I have to stop? Right in front of blocking the entire entrance exit for Starbucks. And I had to until this guy turned around and got out. Also, in terms of your peak times, now, maybe you think you're really, really different from Tim Hortons. I don't, buy Starbucks or Tim Hortons, but I've been paying really close attention to what the lines are like at Tim Hortons. The most I ever saw was at one point 13 cars stacked up, going all the way around and back and into the parking lot behind there, which is not somebody's driveway. Because what you've got to realize is this part that you're talking about is the sole and only egress and ingress for at least 20 people, if not more. There are 12 units and there are 2 houses. And it's the only way we can get in. There is no way to create another way. It's been grandfathered in as our right-of-way. My house is 120 years old, the core of the house. It's been there for forever. And there is going to be a significant problem, I feel, not all the time, but I have the right to go leave my house and go into my house when I need to. And frankly, mostly when I'm going out is when, 7, 8, 9 in the morning, when it's going to be blocked by Starbucks. And that's when all of the people who live in the apartment houses are going to be trying to go out, and you've got people going in and out of Starbucks in the same time in an 18-foot. It's only 18 feet. I paced it off. It's not wide enough. And you're going to end up with accidents, and you're going to end up with a big backup on State Street because of this. I appreciate these people are lovely. I've not had bad, and for the record, if the other people would go along with it, I would go along with fixing that driveway. But I can't do it myself. And it's not my property. I have repaved the part that's my property.
Sure.
But I only own down to my mailbox. But if you can get the other people to go on with it, for the record, I will do it. But you do have you have Niagara Falls pouring off that hill during a rainstorm. And there's a lot of water a lot of water. It's less now because when I trenched, I personally hired my nephew and my boyfriend, and we dug a trench along the side of the driveway, which pulled the water. I know your engineer said there's no spring underneath there, but there is. It's a seasonal spring, but the water bubbles up from the asphalt in the middle of the driveway until I trenched it to the east. And that pulled the water off and it started to dry the driveway. But the driveway's really eroded, and it's because of water runoff. Because I've gone in with concrete and fixed it and it cracks. So there's a significant issue with the water. I think if you put a drain all the way down the side of the drive, that'll probably do it, and we'll keep it off the drive. And then once it's repaired, hopefully that repair would last for a good long time. Right now it doesn't because the water pours down the driveway. So like I said, I'm still concerned about slippage, plastic soil, but I freely admit I'm not an engineer, and I've been assured and I've been told there's insurance for my property. There is a history of that property, my property, slipping. And the last time it did it, which was way before I owned it, but I know from the previous owner, it dropped my whole driveway 6 inches and tore out my gas lines and my water lines. Well, theirs, because it wasn't my property at the time. And the entire gas and water lines had to be replaced because of the slippage of the property. But if I'm insured and an engineer says it's okay, I'll believe that. But I just don't believe that this isn't going to be a problem with the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick comments. The existing entrance on
Yeah, if you
the,
introduce yourself.
okay, Mark Welch with Pickering Associates Engineering Firm. The driveway entrance to the west, as part of these plans, will be widened approximately 6 feet down along East State Street. That'll widen that total entrance to approximately 25 to 26 feet width at the narrowest point. It'll be wider than that as you go back towards Starbucks. So that'll allow for passage of 2 vehicles quite easily. The drainage, we are planning to construct a drainage swale or a ditch along that access road that she just mentioned that will collect water and direct it down to a catch basin that then goes down into a catch basin next to East State Street. So that will collect a lot of that water runoff that she is mentioning. And then if you add in the trench drain that is proposed, that would add even more water that would be captured by the construction of this. So that would help reduce and relieve a lot of those water drainage concerns that have been mentioned. So I just want to mention that.
Can I say just one other thing? Again, I'm not an engineer, but I understand water. And right now, all that land is open and it acts sort of like the Everglades. It's absorbing a lot of that water. When you start paving it over, it's going to push more water under that driveway or somewhere. The water's got to go somewhere. Right now, it's just a soggy marsh. If you walk out into that right now, you know, you'll sink up to your ankles in mud. So again, I'm not an engineer, but it's a concern.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from anybody who's here attending aside from the commissioners? I'm surprised, Mr. Delac, but that's okay. Anything from the commissioners?
I do have a couple more notes, and I guess for internal discussion among the commission here. I wasn't totally aware when I looked at the materials in advance about this provision here on the left side of the image that says surface mounted reboundable traffic delineators that do require all traffic to go to the west coming out of Starbucks. That drive-through, basically it almost guarantees that use of that drive-through is that way. And John, you had noted that you were opposed to that particular provision, think it would be better to go and leave that open. I also was unaware, coming into this, of the circumstances related to the Chipotle, lack of a menu board and speaker, and it not functioning like your traditional drive-through, instead functioning more like a pickup window similar to Donato's. So, I guess a question that I would have, one of our biggest concerns as a city when we deal with developers is that you get approval, and then once you get approval, if a problem is identified later, like after construction or whatever, you're gone, and the entity that is required to pick up the problem and solve the problem ends up being the city, whether it be the code office or the engineering office, or half-built infrastructure in some places, and other places it's a traffic or water problem, and it's very, very difficult to get a response. If we were to accept this in this configuration with what you've proposed, but not include those delineators that you've proposed to send all the Starbucks traffic to the west through that western entrance, but then later determine we run into problems in front of the primary driveway with queuing, would you be willing to come back and install those delineators? And that exit the way that you've proposed? Is that something that we can get some sort of commitment, short of a bond, that says, we would be willing to come back and install those? Because I think that there is a valid concern that Ms. Stout brings up related to the Starbucks traffic and that driveway that is really problematic. At the same time, the city has the concern about queuing in front of the main driveway and creating a traffic safety problem due to queuing in front of that main driveway. No. If you look at this, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to, pose the question here, but to answer your question, what is proposed in this drawing is these reboundable delineators.
I misunderstood.
Sure. So we basically have conflicting problems. We've got the problem of concern about a drive that is really probably not sufficient, given its maintenance status for both the residents that live behind, and again, they have a responsibility to maintain it, but they won't, and all of the Starbucks traffic. Meanwhile, we also have this competing concern that we're concerned about queuing in front of that main driveway that causes traffic to back on East State Street. And so that's my question. Would you be willing to come back and install those delineators later if we had a queuing problem, but not do it initially, specifically so we can see how things balance once things go?
Yes, we would. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that makes sense. Because we need to be able to watch this, we're going to go to a roll call vote because I'm just hearing some different things at the dais. But before we do, one of the things I find is extremely important, and that being, regardless of previous administrations for the city of Athens, the current administration has been very economic development forward, and knowing what we need to do as a community. I've heard some rumblings out there about some level of unfriendliness. I feel strongly compelled to sit and say that that has not been the case, at least over the past 7 or 8 years here in the city of Athens, to where we are seeing development. We do have on Menards. The Menards has outlots that we're hopeful someday someone comes along and puts something there. I'm constantly out there shopping to encourage developers to come into the city and develop responsibly. We've got a new freestanding emergency room hospital, which is going to employ 160 employees with an average salary of $130,000 a year. And I believe that is the right move, and constantly looking at ways in which the city's infrastructure can be improved to accommodate future development, new development. And so whatever the decision of this board, again, I've got to get that out there because that is fact for the city of Athens. I personally, again, have heard the contrary, especially when I became mayor, and as a city council member before that. But I think the track record over the past 14 or past 8 years has shown that we are interested in seeing development here in the city of Athens. And in particular, you know, at the end of the day, the reality is that East State Street, basically from 33 all the way out to the corp limits, you know, that we recognize that is our major retail corridor, if you will, because it certainly is able to capture people who are traversing 50, you know, or jumping off 33 to shop. So just, again, that needs to be really clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a roll call vote down the dais. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Phillips. Oh, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, the only other comment I was going to make is, you know, obviously I'm not an engineer and I don't know the waterways and the traffic studies and that stuff, but from being a business owner, if there's too much traffic, people aren't going to visit these sites. And there are a lot of options on State Street. So I would have to believe that if that became a deterrent for people shopping, there would be a third lane that would go in at some point. And it wouldn't have to be forced from the city. It would be a business decision based off of why are we having lower volumes than we were expecting. If you go there and you have to wait 15 minutes to turn in or 15 minutes to turn out, you're not going to go there. And so I guess that's why I'm so pro this, because the business isn't viable if people are going to have to wait in line. I agree with you. Tim Hortons has the longest lines ever, and its slow service would be one of them. They don't turn people very fast. But I think a lot of people are turned away because of how long they have to wait there. So I just, from a natural business perspective, I would assume that you wouldn't have to force anything, that if this doesn't work and people are having to wait too long or can't get into the site, there's going to be an additional investment that would have to happen, you know what I mean? So I just want to make that comment that's why, I guess, without knowing the traffic studies and everything else, it's just from a business perspective, it makes sense to me that they're going to address that one way or the other if people can't get in and out. So anyway, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Let's just start voting.
Sure, right.
No, we need a motion.
Sir, I would propose a motion that that this commission approves this redesign with the understanding that we would leave off those delineators and that exit and that no left turn sign on the right, but that the developer has committed in this forum, if we run into a problem with queuing at the main entrance later, to coming back in and installing some device in that location as proposed by this plan.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Phillips,
I vote yes to move forward.
Commissioner Stone,
Yes.
myself, yes.
I'm
Commissioner Kotowski?
no, and I vote no because I don't think they're doing enough to improve the western entrance.
I'm voting no because of the water on East State Street.
Commissioner Bain, no?
And also the slip situation. I don't think it's a wall solution myself.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say I'm not an engineer.
I'm not an engineer either. So the case passes 3-2. Thank you. That is the only case we have. Any communications? I should go back. Let me go back. The case passes pending the delineators, as Commissioner Stone had indicated, with the agreement from your firm as we move forward. You may.
This, the access issue, so under the Title 27, correct?
41?
Under the Title 27?
This is Title 41.
Correct. Subsequent to this, we will submit for remind me what it's called, it's not an encroachment permit, it's a...
Curb cut permit and a
Curb cut
zoning
permit.
permit. We can talk after if you'd like.
Well, I'd like to go on record to say that, not understanding the sort of tie between those two outfits in the city, it would be my expectation at this point that a curb cut permit is a rubber stamp at this point. Is that fair to say?
I mean, it's, rubber stamp is a strong term.
Sure.
But, you know, obviously, you know, I'm the one that grants curb cut permits, and I just voted yes for your development, so, you know, short of you coming to me with a permit that showed something completely different than what you have on this drawing that was approved by the planning commission, we're gonna approve it.
Understood, loud and clear.
Curb cut permit, zoning permit.
Yes,
those
sir,
are two,
we're
yeah.
on it. Thank you.
Okay. I recognize that it's been a long process for you. As you heard from my colleagues on the commission, it's also an extremely, extremely challenging site. And I think that's what has lent a lot to the course that you guys have had to navigate in order to get to this point. So it's passed. Communications, we don't have any communications unless any commissioners have anything that they, okay, and we don't have anything from Director Riggs at this point. Reports from the city planner and the Director of Development and Code Enforcement.
I have nothing, sir.
Okay, Director Riggs, and obviously Planner Paul Logue is not with us today. Opportunity for citizens to speak on things that are not on the agenda. Seeing head shakes. I know the audience can't hear that, so nothing from the audience. Announcements and other business. Our next meeting will be May 18th here in council chambers at 12 p.m. At this point, unless we don't have any cases or communications at that point in time, at which we will make sure that we get the word out that we wouldn't if we don't have anything to discuss. I would like to get an motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, this body is adjourned.